The original Halloween by John Carpenter is a masterclass in chills and thrills, made on a tiny budget containing virtually no red stuff, and became globally the most successful independent horror film ever made. It created one of the most iconic characters in the shape of, well, The Shape, or Michael Myers, and has a multitude of elements that have become part of horror genre canon. It has spawned a franchise that, with the release of David Gordon Green's latest Halloween offering, numbers 13 in total. So 41 years after the original became a surprise smash hit, and with the final part of this latest reboot trilogy now released, aptly titled Halloween Ends, will the horror franchise that started them all go out with a scream or a whisper? Well, the news is not good, I'm afraid, and if you're looking for a little chill or thrill this Halloween, this is not the film you're looking for. However, showing that there is no accounting for taste, it has opened very strongly at the box office in its opening weekend, although I'd expect once people have seen it and the review scores are out that it will drop off fast. What's even stranger is that this was a post-pandemic dual release, with it streaming on Peacock as well, as a general theatrical release. And I think that's because they didn't have a lot of confidence in the film. Each one of the films in this trilogy seems to have either financially or score-wise been worse than the last, with the initial Halloween reboot in 2018 being the most successful, both with the critics and commercially. So it's no surprise that the latest offering appears to be right on that same track. Halloween Ends makes me scratch my head, as I can't work out what the director was up to, and I think he probably never thought this film was going to get made. There, apart from the characters, appears to be no red thread throughout, and it looks like there was some pretty poor planning in terms of narrative arc or plot for the three films. But as it might be a little unfair to look at this as a trilogy rather than as a standalone, let's see if it has any independent merits both as a horror film and as a fitting climax to the franchise. There are major spoilers ahead. Halloween Ends does not know what it wants to be when it grows up, and could have spent a bit more time in the editing room with a runtime of around 150 minutes. It's overly reliant on bad horror tropes, and rather than coming off as a satire like Scream, it becomes a pastiched, confused mess. The jump scares don't make you jump, and it's boring. Not a good look for a horror. The temptation to forward it was strong with this one. One good thing are the serviceable acting performances from the entire cast. The film is trying to do too much, being both curse transfer, psychological study, what makes a serial killer, survivor trauma therapy, social commentary on how society treats both victim and perpetrator, sometimes sort of slasher, and with Laurie writing a book throughout, let's throw in some murder she wrote. Oh wait, there's even a bit of romance with a doomed love story. As for The Shape, well, he ends up sidelined in his own movie. Less of a shape, more of a smudge, and we are introduced to a character that no one, really if they're honest, gives a toss about. The film opens almost exactly the same as the original did and is in the original font. That's exactly what I want to see when watching a horror. Good font choices. Corrie is babysitting for annoying brat, and after some tacky exposition with the mum speaking to Corrie, telling him about how the little git is a bedwetter and troubled with dreams about Michael Myers, the parents shuffle off to a party, but not before we get a totally not jumpy jump scare. I might have raised an eyebrow slightly. Cue homage to the original, with them sat down watching a movie, which is JC's The Thing. Next, the little boy goes missing, and Corrie is then playing peekaboo, unable to find him. After finding a serrated bread knife on the stairs, I knew at this point it was nothing to do with Monsieur Myers, as he only uses a butcher's knife, he ends up in the attic and being locked in by the little fella. I was sighing at the screen. The dark attic, the locked door. He kicks his way out, promptly knocking small child over the balcony, just as the parents arrive home. What timing! Would have been more shocking if the body that falls didn't look like a dummy. Just a teeny bit of cash in this scene, guys, especially as it's an establishing shot. Instead, we get mannequin child not even bothering to put his hands out as he hits the floor. We then get shocked parents, you've killed my son scene, and we're into the credits. Oh look, it's the original font again. But I do think that the morphin pumpkins was quite a cool little effect. We then get another homage to the original with an introductory shot of the town. As Laurie is writing a book, it gives these hacks a perfect way of crowbarring in a complete recap of the series as she narrates to flashbacks of the previous movies. I hate to tell you this, guys, but 99.9% of people in your audience has probably seen a Halloween movie before and know the story. After some homey scenes with granddaughter, we cut to curly-haired Corrie riding his bike to work, with his stepfather having a go. Then we see granddaughter getting pulled over by sleazy cop guy. Remember in the original when Laurie bumps into? Next up, garage scene where our very unfortunate Corrie is bullied by some teenagers about killing the small child and ends up cutting his hand, at which point Laurie sticks up for him, offers him a knife, which he takes, and then slashes the teenager's tyres. Yeah, because that's really going to work out well for him later. This begins a romance subplot with granddaughter as Laurie takes him to the hospital where coincidentally her granddaughter works. We then get a very homey scene, and in juxtaposition we see Corrie's home life, which appears to be an absolute train wreck, with a mother that is never winning any awards in that category. We then have romance blossoming on a bike scene with granddaughter, and a second romancy bit between the old sheriff and Laurie, where she asks about troubled Corey. We then get typical Halloween horror party trope with granddaughter and Corrie, where dead child, I think he was asking for it, mum kicks off at Corrie, ridden with guilt, we don't know why because it was an accident, he leaves, and then him and the granddaughter have a spat. On his way home, he bumps into the bullies, remember that tyre thing? And they knock him off a bridge, accidentally. And he's dragged into a sewer tunnel. We then get him waking up, another jump scare that might have made me shrug this time. They use the ham one, first made famous by Carrie at the end of the movie, and so well used it could have its own OnlyFans site. Michael stares evilly into his eyes and transfers the evil curse into the lad, who promptly goes outside and murders a tramp. He goes home and cleans up, and then he meets Laurie again, and her spidey senses must be tingling because she knows something is up. He also makes up with granddaughter who he had a spat with. With Laurie's spidey senses on full alert, she then starts to play Murder, She Wrote, going to ask his family, etc., and trying to check him out. Only the best for my granddaughter. We then get a killing spree as he learns from Michael on how to do it, and it's obvious that Michael is now a weaker old man. He'd be 65 according to canon. There's some homage lurking shots, very few, of someone watching Laurie. Killer POV is another thing that's not really used in this movie, and I know that Corrie is a killer in training, but he's very vocal throughout. Then another establishing shot involving Laurie in a bar, where Dad of Dead Kiddywinks uses "you could tell something had changed in his eyes" horror trope. It's at this stage where rather than sigh, it was becoming an explosive exhale, and my eyebrows had a life of their own. Cue another death, who ends up as a pin-up, and then we're back to romance again. He starts living in the house where Kiddo was accidentally killed, and there's a face-off with Laurie. We then get a couple more kills at the radio station, as DJ had been mean to granddaughter in an earlier scene. He then obviously takes care of the bullies, and they're all brown bread. More member berries to the original with knife draw scene, reflection scene, evil parent becomes toast. Although I'd have poisoned the witch years ago. There was a running away together bit, but it's so rubbish that I left it out to save you. More Laurie face-off, and he promptly kills himself. I told you that they were going for Romeo and Juliet. Granddaughter then arrives to see Laurie holding the knife. Oh no, confusion ensues. Then Hand grabs the mask. Will the real Michael Myers please stand up? And it turns out Corrie isn't quite as dead as we thought, even having stabbed himself in the neck extremely competently, having used hand grab for a jump scare. Once, I think they were trying a second time, and I still didn't jump and was literally giggling at this point. I know dark comedy is part of horror, but still. And Myers promptly kills him again. Then we have fight sequence with Laurie, where they use threat of hand in waste disposal trope, and he's finally dead on the kitchen side. The sheriffs then turn up, and I shit you not, they have a parade through the town like a bad scene from The Wicker Man, with Myers strapped like a suitcase on a roof rack, before his corpse is passed overhead as a crowd-surfing rock star, and Laurie tosses him in a grinder. The film closes on bad Hallmark Channel narration of Laurie finishing her book, blah blah blah, and then a romance scene with her on the step. Everything's fine with granddaughter, by the way, not that I gave a toss. And the final shot is the mask on the table. You'd have thought they'd have chucked it or burned it. But nope, it's now a weird coffee table ornament. So that's it. That's Halloween Ends. And by the time it does, you're wondering if the name was parody or satire. Despite the use of numerous establishing shots in the style of JC's original, more horror movie staples than you can shake a stick at, Easter eggs aplenty, including Nick Castle, the original Shape cameo, it's still such a nonsensical mess that simultaneously had me giggling, exasperated, annoyed and bored. Don't bother with this, just watch the trailer because all of the best bits are in that. Michael is only really in it for the last 10 minutes, and whilst Corrie was a perfectly serviceable actor, we came to see Michael, not him. I've personally penned a love letter in the form of a video review for the original with lots of fun facts and info if you want to see how it's done right on my channel, and here's the link. If you haven't seen the original version in a while, it's well worth revisiting. I'm Midlife Nerded, and you know what to do. Help me show the algorithm that I'm not a ghost.